February 18th, 2001, 9:47 a.m., Foxstone Park, Vienna, Virginia. The man in the grey overcoat walks with the measured pace of someone who has done this 1,000 times before. His breath fogs in the winter air. Beneath his arm, a package wrapped in black plastic. Inside that package, 7 classified documents detailing the identities of every CIA asset operating inside the Russian Federal Security Service. His name is Harold James Whitmore. He is 56 years old, 5 feet 11 inches, 187 pounds. Senior counterintelligence analyst, Central Intelligence Agency, Langley, Virginia. Security clearance, TS/SCI, with compartmented access. Annual salary, $142,000. Years of service, 31. He is also, as of this cold February morning, the most successful spy in Russian intelligence history. Whitmore approaches the wooden footbridge that crosses the frozen creek, the dead drop site. He has used this location 11 times over 3 decades. The procedure never changes. Place the package beneath the northeast corner of the bridge. Mark the signal site with white chalk. Collect payment 2 days later from a separate location. Simple, clean, untraceable. What Harold Whitmore does not know, as he bends to slide the package into position, is that 14 FBI agents are watching him through long-range optics from 3 concealed positions. What he does not know is that an infrared camera mounted in the bare oak tree 40 yards east has been recording his every movement for the past 7 minutes. What he does not know is that the investigation that will end his freedom began with a single sheet of paper he threw away 11 months ago. A receipt from a hardware store in Fredericksburg. The arrest will take 9 seconds. The interrogation will last 11 days. The damage assessment will continue for 4 years and ultimately conclude that Harold James Whitmore compromised 847 classified documents, burned 23 covert operations, exposed 14 intelligence officers, and directly caused the execution of at least 9 Russian citizens who had risked everything to help the United States. But that is the end of the story. This is the beginning. Harold Whitmore was born on March 3, 1944, in Terre Haute, Indiana. His father worked the assembly line at a ball-bearing factory. His mother taught Sunday school at First Presbyterian Church. They lived in a 2-bedroom house on a street where every lawn was mowed on Saturday and every family attended service on Sunday. He was, by all accounts, an unremarkable child. Average grades, average height, average athletic ability. His high school yearbook lists a single extracurricular activity, chess club, of which he was treasurer for 1 semester before resigning. Teachers would later describe him as polite, quiet, forgettable. The kind of person who disappears into a crowd. Whitmore enrolled at Indiana University in the fall of 1962. He majored in political science because it seemed practical and minored in Russian studies because a guidance counselor told him the government was hiring linguists. He graduated in 4 years with a 3.2 GPA, married his college girlfriend in a ceremony attended by 47 guests, and submitted his application to the Central Intelligence Agency on the same day he mailed his wedding thank you cards. The agency hired him in October of 1969. Starting salary, $9,200 per year. Assignment, Soviet Analytical Division, Langley Headquarters. His job was to read reports from field officers, transcripts from wiretaps, summaries from signals intelligence. Whitmore read between 600 and 800 pages of classified material every day. He indexed, he cross-referenced, he wrote assessments that his supervisors occasionally forwarded to policymakers who occasionally read them. He was good at his job, not brilliant, not exceptional, simply reliably good. He arrived at 7:30 each morning. He left at 5:45 each evening. He attended the Christmas party but never stayed past 9. He remembered birthdays but never organized celebrations. He received satisfactory performance reviews that praised his attention to detail and noted, year after year, that he worked well independently, the kind of employee who never causes problems. 17 years passed this way. His marriage produced 2 children. His salary increased to $68,000. His clearance expanded to include compartmented information with special access. He knew things that fewer than 200 people in the entire United States government were authorized to know. And then, on a Tuesday evening in April of 1986, something changed. The trigger was not dramatic. There was no crisis of conscience, no ideological awakening, no romantic entanglement with a beautiful foreign operative. The trigger was a letter from his daughter's private school informing him that tuition would increase by $4,200 the following year. Whitmore sat at his kitchen table and did the mathematics. His son would start college in 18 months. His daughter would follow 2 years later. His wife's spending had increased steadily since her promotion to regional sales manager at a pharmaceutical company. The mortgage on their 4-bedroom colonial in McLean had 17 years remaining. His pension, if he retired at 62, would cover approximately 60% of his current expenses. The numbers did not work. He thought about this problem the way he thought about every problem, methodically, systematically, without emotion. He considered requesting a transfer to a higher paying position, but his performance reviews, while positive, were not exceptional enough to justify advancement. He considered asking his wife to contribute more to household expenses, but that conversation had gone poorly twice before. He considered selling the house and moving to a smaller property, but his wife had spent 3 years decorating and would not agree. He considered the fact that he possessed information worth millions of dollars to the right buyer. June 12, 1986. The Soviet Embassy, Washington, D.C. Whitmore parked his personal vehicle, a 1983 Toyota Camry, 3 blocks from the embassy compound. He wore a baseball cap and sunglasses. In his briefcase, he carried a single sheet of paper listing the names, cover identities, and current assignments of 3 CIA officers operating under diplomatic cover in Moscow. He did not walk through the embassy's main entrance. Instead, he approached a guard at the vehicle gate and stated that he wished to speak with someone regarding a business matter. The guard made a phone call. 11 minutes later, a man in a grey suit escorted Whitmore to a small office on the 3rd floor. The conversation lasted 47 minutes. Whitmore explained what he could offer. The man in the grey suit explained what Moscow could provide in return. They agreed on initial terms: $50,000 in cash, deposited in a safety deposit box at a bank in Zurich, in exchange for the document Whitmore had brought, and a commitment to continue providing information on a regular basis. No ideology was discussed. No oaths were taken. It was, in every respect, a business transaction. Over the following 15 years, the business proved extraordinarily profitable. Whitmore delivered 847 classified documents to his Russian handlers. In return, he received $2.7 million in cash payments, plus an additional $800,000 deposited in a Moscow bank account held in his alias. The information he provided was catastrophic. In 1987, he revealed the identity of Dmitry Polyakov, a Soviet general who had been providing information to the United States for over 20 years. Polyakov was recalled to Moscow, interrogated for 11 months, and executed by firing squad on March 15, 1988. In 1989, he exposed a technical operation that allowed the CIA to intercept communications from a fiber optic cable running beneath the streets of Moscow. The operation had cost $274 million to develop. It was neutralized within 6 weeks. In 1991, he compromised the identities of 4 Russian scientists who were secretly providing the United States with information about Moscow's biological weapons program. All 4 disappeared. Their families were informed they had died in industrial accidents. In 1994, he revealed the existence of a tunnel that allowed CIA officers to access a Russian intelligence facility without detection. The tunnel was discovered, and the 2 agency officers using it at the time barely escaped with their lives. Year after year, operation after operation, asset after asset. Harold Whitmore sat at his desk in Langley, read classified reports, wrote careful assessments, attended staff meetings, and systematically destroyed 3 decades of American intelligence work, and no one suspected a thing. This was the remarkable truth about Harold Whitmore's betrayal. He passed every security review. He cleared every polygraph examination. He sailed through every counterintelligence screening. In 31 years of service, he was never once flagged as a potential security risk. The polygraph in particular deserves examination. Whitmore took the examination 11 times during his career as a spy. He passed every time. His heart rate remained steady. His skin conductance showed no anomalies. His breathing patterns displayed no signs of deception. How does a man lie for 30 years without his body betraying him? Whitmore would later explain his technique to FBI interrogators. It was, he said, a matter of mental compartmentalization. When the examiner asked whether he had ever provided classified information to a foreign government, Whitmore did not think about the documents he had delivered. He thought about the specific definition of the word provided. Had he provided information? Or had he merely facilitated a transaction in which information changed hands? The distinction was meaningless in any practical sense, but it was enough to keep his pulse steady. Meanwhile, the CIA was hemorrhaging assets at an alarming rate. By 1994, counterintelligence officials had identified a pattern. Too many operations were failing. Too many sources were being compromised. Too many coincidences were occurring in too short a time. There was a mole. Somewhere in the agency, someone was feeding information to Moscow. The investigation that followed was the largest in CIA history. Codenamed Grey Suit, it employed 32 full-time investigators, reviewed the personnel files of over 2,000 employees, and generated 47,000 pages of documentation. The investigators examined financial records, travel patterns, personal relationships, professional grievances. They looked for anyone who had access to the compromised operations, displayed signs of unexplained wealth, showed any indication of ideological sympathy toward Russia, or demonstrated any behavioral anomalies whatsoever. Harold Whitmore was interviewed 3 times. He expressed concern about the leaks. He offered to assist the investigation in any way possible. He suggested, during his second interview, that the mole might be someone in the Directorate of Operations rather than the Analytical Division. This suggestion was noted and pursued. He was never seriously considered as a suspect. The problem was that Whitmore did not fit any of the standard profiles. He had no financial troubles that showed in his records because he laundered his payments through a series of carefully managed accounts. He had no ideological motivation because he did not care about ideology. He had no personal grievances because he had never been passed over for promotion or subjected to disciplinary action. He had no behavioral anomalies because he had spent 30 years perfecting the appearance of normalcy. He was, in every measurable respect, exactly what he appeared to be: a quiet, competent, unremarkable analyst who did his job and went home to his family. The Grey Suit investigation eventually focused on a different suspect: Aldrich Ames, a veteran officer in the Directorate of Operations who displayed obvious signs of unexplained wealth. Expensive cars, a large house purchased with cash, lavish spending on his Colombian-born wife, Ames was arrested in February 1994 and convicted of espionage. He would later plead guilty and receive a life sentence. The investigators believed they had found their mole. The hemorrhaging slowed. The investigation wound down. But not all the losses could be explained by Ames. A small team of analysts continued to examine the damage assessment. They found 7 operations that Ames could not have compromised because he had no access to the relevant information. They found 3 assets who had been exposed after Ames's access had been restricted. They found patterns that did not match and timelines that did not align. There was another mole. Somewhere in the agency, a second traitor was still operating. The second investigation began in 1996. It was smaller, more focused, and far more secret. Only 9 people knew of its existence. They worked from an unmarked office in a commercial building in Tysons Corner, Virginia, far from Langley and far from anyone who might be watching. For 4 years, they found nothing. And then, in March of 2000, a retired officer in the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service defected to the United States. He brought with him a collection of documents that he had spent years secretly copying from classified archives. Among those documents was a file that contained the correspondence between Moscow Center and an American agent whose true identity was unknown. The file did not include the agent's name, but it included his voice. The Russian officer had recorded a telephone conversation between the unknown agent and his handler. The conversation was brief, just under 2 minutes. The audio quality was poor, but the voice was clear enough to analyze. FBI technicians ran the recording through voice recognition software. They compared it against archived recordings of every CIA employee who had ever been recorded speaking on a monitored telephone line. The process took 7 weeks. The match came back on April 23, 2000. Harold James Whitmore. Probability of match, 97.3%. The FBI did not arrest him immediately. Instead, they began the most intensive surveillance operation in Bureau history. For 11 months, they watched every move Whitmore made. They monitored his telephone. They tracked his vehicle. They observed his daily routine with a level of scrutiny usually reserved for heads of state. They found nothing unusual. Whitmore went to work. Whitmore came home. Whitmore mowed his lawn on Saturdays. Whitmore attended church on Sundays. He was, in every observable way, an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. Then, in January of 2001, they found the receipt. An FBI agent assigned to examine Whitmore's garbage discovered a crumpled piece of paper at the bottom of a trash bag. It was a receipt from a hardware store in Fredericksburg, Virginia. The receipt showed the purchase of a roll of white chalk. White chalk. The FBI knew from the defectors' documents that Moscow's agents in Washington used chalk marks to signal their handlers. A white chalk mark on a specific mailbox indicated that a dead drop was ready for pickup. A different mark indicated that a meeting was requested. They checked the hardware store's security footage. The footage showed Harold Whitmore purchasing the chalk on January 14th. He was wearing the same grey overcoat he wore to work every day. The surveillance intensified. On February 12th, agents observed Whitmore drive to a mailbox in Vienna, Virginia, and make a small mark on its side. On February 15th, they observed him visit a park in Falls Church and spend 23 minutes walking a trail that contained no obvious recreational value. On February 17th, they observed him place a package in his briefcase before leaving for work. February 18th, 2001, 9:32 a.m. Harold Whitmore leaves his home in McLean and drives east on Route 123. He does not notice the grey sedan that follows at a distance of approximately half a mile. He does not notice the white van parked on the shoulder near the entrance to Foxstone Park. He does not notice anything unusual because, after 30 years, nothing has ever been unusual. He parks his Toyota Camry in the small lot adjacent to the park entrance. He removes the package from his briefcase. He begins walking toward the footbridge. The path is approximately 400 yards long. It takes him 6 minutes to traverse at his measured pace. During those 6 minutes, 14 FBI agents maintain visual contact through binoculars, spotting scopes, and a camera mounted in the oak tree overlooking the bridge. At 9:47 a.m., Whitmore reaches the footbridge. He pauses. He looks left, then right. He sees nothing because there is nothing to see. The agents are concealed behind tree lines, in unmarked vehicles, in positions chosen specifically for their invisibility. Whitmore bends down. He slides the package beneath the northeast corner of the bridge. He stands up. He brushes dirt from his knee. The arrest team moves. They come from 3 directions simultaneously. 4 agents from the north, 4 from the south, 6 from the parking lot behind him. They close the distance in 9 seconds. The lead agent, a man named Richardson, who has rehearsed this moment for 11 days, reaches Whitmore first. Richardson identifies himself as FBI. He orders Whitmore to place his hands on his head. Whitmore complies. His face shows no emotion. His hands do not shake. Even in this moment, his body does not betray him. The search takes 4 minutes. Agents recover the package from beneath the bridge. They recover $50,000 in cash from the trunk of Whitmore's vehicle. They recover a loaded Beretta 9mm handgun from the glove compartment. Whitmore says nothing during the search. He says nothing during the ride to FBI headquarters. He says nothing for the first 4 hours of interrogation. Then, at 3:47 p.m., he asks for a glass of water. When the water arrives, Whitmore takes a single sip. He places the glass on the table. He looks at the 2 agents sitting across from him. He says, "I suppose you want to know why?" The interrogation that follows will last 11 days. Whitmore will eventually provide a full accounting of his activities. Every document delivered, every payment received, every contact made with Russian intelligence over 30 years. He will explain his methods, his precautions, his technique for beating the polygraph. He will answer every question put to him with the same measured, methodical precision that characterized his analytical work. But he will never provide a satisfying answer to the question he himself raised. Why? The money, certainly. $3.5 million is not an insignificant sum. But Whitmore was not poor before he began spying. He was not desperate. He was not in debt. He could have lived comfortably on his CIA salary and retired with a full pension. Ideology? He expressed none. When asked about his political beliefs, he said he had voted Republican in some elections and Democratic in others. He had no particular views about the Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union, or American foreign policy. Russia was simply a customer. America was simply an employer. The distinction between them was, in his telling, largely irrelevant. Ego? Perhaps. Whitmore acknowledged that he took satisfaction in his success. He enjoyed the challenge of operating undetected. He felt, he said, a certain pride in his professionalism. But this seems insufficient to explain 30 years of betrayal, revenge. Against whom? Whitmore had no grievances. He had not been wronged. He had not been overlooked. He had simply decided, one evening in April of 1986, that his skills were worth more than his employer was paying. The final damage assessment concluded that Harold Whitmore's espionage resulted in the deaths of at least 9 individuals. The true number is likely higher, but Moscow's records have never been fully examined. Among the dead, Dmitry Polyakov, the Soviet general who had provided intelligence to the United States for 20 years, Alexei Kozlov, a scientist who passed information about biological weapons research, Maria Dmitrieva, an interpreter who photographed documents at the Soviet Ministry of Defense. 4 others whose names remain classified. 2 more whose identities were never confirmed. 9 people, at minimum, who trusted the United States to protect them. Harold Whitmore sold their names for an average price of approximately $388,000 each. The trial was brief. Whitmore pleaded guilty to 13 counts of espionage and conspiracy. The prosecution recommended life in prison without possibility of parole. The defense requested consideration of Whitmore's cooperation during the investigation. Judge Robert Kendall sentenced him on July 6, 2002. Life without parole. No consideration for cooperation. The judge noted that Whitmore's willingness to provide information after his arrest did not mitigate the damage he had caused or the lives he had ended. Whitmore showed no reaction when the sentence was read. He stood, as he always stood, with his hands folded and his expression neutral. He was escorted from the courtroom without speaking. He is currently incarcerated at the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility in Florence, Colorado. He spends 23 hours per day in a 7 by 12-foot cell. He is allowed 1 hour of exercise per day in a small concrete enclosure. He has no contact with other prisoners. His wife divorced him 11 months after his arrest. She has not spoken publicly about her marriage since. His son changed his surname and moved to Seattle, where he works as a software engineer. His daughter reportedly attempted contact once in 2008. The visit was denied. Harold Whitmore is now 80 years old. He has been incarcerated for 24 years. He will die in his cell. The receipt was the thing. 847 classified documents delivered without detection. 14 polygraph examinations passed. 23 covert operations compromised. 31 years of service masking 30 years of betrayal. And it all ended because of a crumpled piece of paper at the bottom of a garbage bag. One might ask how a man so meticulous, so methodical, so careful in every aspect of his tradecraft could make such an elementary mistake. How does someone who has evaded detection for 3 decades suddenly become careless about a hardware store receipt? The answer, perhaps, is that he did not become careless. He was always careless in small ways. He simply got lucky for 30 years. The statisticians call it survivorship bias. We study the spy who got caught because we can see his mistakes. We cannot study the mistakes of the spy who was never caught because we do not know he exists. For every Harold Whitmore, there may be others who made similar errors and simply were not noticed, who threw away similar receipts that similar agents never found, who walked past similar surveillance that was looking in different directions. Whitmore succeeded for 30 years, not because he was perfect, but because perfection was not required. The system that was designed to catch him was looking for something else. The profiles did not fit him. The indicators did not flag him. The examinations did not challenge him. He passed every test because the tests were testing for the wrong things. And then, on a cold January morning, he bought a roll of white chalk at a hardware store, paid cash, and threw the receipt in his kitchen garbage. Here is what the story of Harold Whitmore tells us. It tells us that the greatest dangers are often the most ordinary. The mole was not the brilliant ideologue, or the troubled romantic, or the obvious malcontent. The mole was the quiet man in the grey overcoat who never caused problems and always submitted his reports on time. It tells us that systems can be gamed, that polygraphs can be beaten, that profiles can be evaded, that 30 years of vigilance can be undone by a single piece of paper that almost nobody thought to examine. It tells us that betrayal requires no grand motivation. Sometimes a man sells his country for the same reason he might change jobs or renegotiate his salary. because he believes his skills are undervalued, because the numbers do not work, because someone offers him more, and it tells us that luck runs out. Not today, not tomorrow, not even, perhaps, in this decade. But eventually, the receipt that should have been burned gets thrown away. The routine that has worked 1,000 times fails on the 1,001st. The careful man makes a careless mistake, and everything he has built collapses in 9 seconds on a February morning. February 18th, 2001, 9:47 a.m. Foxstone Park, Vienna, Virginia. A man in a grey overcoat bends beneath a footbridge to deposit a package. In another world, in another timeline, he stands up, walks back to his car, and drives home unobserved. He retires 3 years later with a full pension and $3.5 million in undeclared assets. He lives out his days in comfortable anonymity. He dies in his bed, surrounded by family who never knew what he had done. But in this world, in this timeline, there is a receipt in a garbage bag. There is an FBI agent who notices chalk on the itemized purchases. There are 14 men with binoculars waiting in the tree line. In this world, Harold Whitmore places the package beneath the bridge, stands up, brushes the dirt from his knee, and turns to find his future closing in from every direction. The arrest takes 9 seconds. The consequences last forever.